I'm going to introduce Margaret first. She, as I said, is the Chief Operating and Development Officer at Café Momentum as Executive Director. So that means she oversees all organizational operations and fundraising. Before she joined Café Momentum, she served as the Senior Director of Corporate and Foundation Relations for the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Prior to that, at the Bush Center, she worked with United Way of Metro Dallas. She was the Senior Director of Individual Giving and Team Development. She oversaw the Tocqueville Society and Leadership Giving Society programs. She previously worked at Northern Trust as the Vice President and the Director of Marketing for Texas. And there she was responsible for business development, corporate philanthropy, and events. Now, before she returned to Dallas, she spent 7.5 years working in the George W. Bush White House in Washington, D.C. She joined the White House staff as scheduler to President Bush in 2001 through 2004, when she joined the G8 Summit Planning Organization to manage Mrs. Bush's spousal program in Sea Island, Georgia, that many of you saw a lot of that coverage in national media. So, wonderful work. After the G8 Summit, she worked as a policy analyst at the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy. She received her BA from the University of Texas. Congrats on the men's Sweet 16 coming up. You didn't fare too well in my bracket. But you did in Dorina's.
Always talented.
So Margaret and her family live in beautiful East Dallas, not far from the Arboretum. So let me introduce Margaret.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Like Bill said, my name is Margaret Windham. I'm the Executive Director for Café Momentum in Dallas. When you read my title, it's part of that's an old bio. I think I've been with Café Momentum for 7 years. So I came in as Chief Development Officer, then somehow I took over operations, and then I became the Executive Director as we've created an expansion program to create Café Momentums and affect juvenile justice all over the country. How many of you all are familiar with or have been to Café Momentum downtown? Awesome, that's a great group. So as our founder would say, those of you that didn't raise your hand, why do you hate good food? We do have remarkably good food. I actually catered my wedding reception before I went to work there because it's such a special mission and really close to my heart. Café Momentum, some of this will be repeat information for some of you and maybe new for some of you. But we are a post-release internship program for juvenile justice involved youth. We work with youth ages 15 to 19 that are coming out of the system, whether that be actually in detention or many of our kids are also on probation. Really the only criteria to be part of our program is between the ages of 15 to 19 and that you've been involved in the juvenile justice system within the last 12 months. We try to intervene in that sweet spot of before they go back a second time. The general statistic in the state of Texas is once a juvenile has been incarcerated and part of the justice system, they will likely reoffend. There's a 50% chance within 12 months. Once they've reoffended a second time, the likelihood is about 90% that they will be in and out of the system for the rest of their life, which is why Dallas County has deemed these children throwaways, because they essentially put them in a system, lock them up, spend $127,000 a year to lock them up, and basically forget about them. If you have been to Café Momentum and met these young people, you know that they are, first and foremost, children, but they have so much to give the world. They are compassionate, they are sweet, and they have endured so much trauma in their young lives. And we have created a system. Dallas is divided by I-30. 55% of the population lives north of I-30. 45% of the population lives south of I-30. 100% of the commerce is north of I-30. So we have set up a system that is broken and doesn't work for our youth. So they go into the system. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So when our kids come out of the system, they go right back into the same situation, the same family, the same environment that they got in trouble in the first place. So the likelihood is that they will make the same mistakes and end up in the same place. So our mission is a general mission. It's more of kind of a vision to help them achieve their full potential. Because we believe that everyone deserves an education, everyone deserves health care, everyone deserves love and compassion, and everyone deserves resources. So we, as an organization, walk beside our youth to advocate for them until they're able to advocate for themselves. So we provide what we call an ecosystem of support, and that ecosystem consists of a workforce development component, which is the restaurant itself, and all of our youth work in the restaurant. They're paid between $11 and $15 an hour, and they do everything from front of house to back of house and everything in between. Because we're not only teaching a marketable skill, but we're also teaching how their role interacts with everyone else in the restaurant and what teamwork looks like. And if someone is working in the dish pit, if they stop doing their job, it literally affects everyone else in the restaurant. Not just the diners, but everybody trying to do their job, the chefs, everyone. If there's no clean dishes, we're going to shut down. Or somebody will make us shut down for sure. The second component is 24/7 case management support. So we have a program team which consists of social workers and a licensed clinical therapist. So they provide, our case management team provides basic needs, housing, food insecurities. 54% of our kids are homeless at some point during the internship program. And when you're talking about ages 15 to 19, half of those kids are basically have been abandoned. They also don't want us to know if they're under the age of 18. They don't want us to know that they're homeless because they don't want to be in the CPS system. It has its own ups and downs, but it is they will do anything to stay out of that system, especially if they have siblings. They'll couch surf. They're sleeping on friends' couches. They're sleeping on trains. It's heartbreaking. So we work with a number of community partners in Dallas to find the right situation for them. Sometimes that is CPS. We have a legal obligation to make sure that these young people are taken care of. So if we know and we have to intervene to do something. But we work with a number of organizations to help find our kids a stable place to live. The third component is mental health. Like I said, we have a licensed clinical therapist on staff, and 99.9% of our kids have experienced adolescent trauma. When there's a test called the ACE test, and when you take that test, most people answer like one thing on it is a yes. Have you experienced things like domestic violence, neglect, being hungry? Most people answer one. Our kids generally answer every question is yes. So getting them the help that they need and the therapy they need is so vital to their growth and future. However, mental health and therapy has such a stigma, especially to the population of which we serve. And our other challenge is that once they're employed by us and working in the restaurant, we can no longer mandate therapy. So we provide an orientation session every other month for youth to come in, learn about the program. It's a 2-week orientation. During that 2 weeks, they're not employed by us yet. So we require them to do a kind of basic needs analysis with our therapist. They also do some group therapy. So we're trying to break that stigma before they go into the workforce component, so they actively want to seek therapy. Last year, 77% of our kids actively reached out to get therapy on their own, which is, to me, they're also, all the components are so important, but if you don't break down what's happened and how they've ended up where they are, how do you ever get past that? And they're heartbreaking things. One of our young people just testified in a court case in Houston because he found his mother stabbed to death in her car by her fiance. It's just things that are so far from the realm of possibility that they've experienced. That how would you ever get past that without talking to someone about it? The fourth component, which is also, as I said, they're also important, but the fourth component is education. The median income for a high school dropout in this country is about $10,000. The median income for a high school graduate in this country is about $26,000, and the poverty line is about $16,000. So we think that diploma and that education piece is so vital to their future. So we do require all of our youth that are in the program to be actively engaged in high school or working towards their GED if they have it, unless they're 19 if they're already graduated. And we really struggled with that in the beginning. It was such a barrier for many of our kids because schools are really one of the first institutions that told them that they were bad and kicked them out. Schools get paid on butts and seats in classes. So when they're not showing up, the school district isn't making any money out of them. So they discard them. Again, they're throwaways. We send these kids out into the world to fend for themselves. And there are a number of alternative schools in Dallas that our kids have been enrolled in, but they're hard to get to. They've got to take 3 trains when you don't have at-home support to get to school. And to be successful, it's the last thing on their mind. And they certainly, at that age, they're not really seeing why that's important. When I can stand on the corner and sell drugs and make a ton of money and take care of my family, help pay the bills, why would I go to school? So we see the importance for them until they see the importance. So in 2019, we created Café Momentum Academy. So we have our own homeschool program. Most of our kids, some of them still go to their traditional schools, but most of our kids are going to school with us on site. So downtown, where Café Momentum, the restaurant is across the street, we have a community services center, which is our therapy location where our case management team is and where our school is. And it's also a place for our kids to come anytime they want. We're open from 8 a.m. till they're finished with work. And it's a place where they can just be. They can take a nap, they can go to the kitchen and get something to eat. But generally they go to school in the mornings. They probably play pool and hang out and watch TV and play video games for about an hour or 2, and then they go to work in the afternoon. We built that community services center in 2018 because we realized that what we really needed to do with our kids was increase our hours of influence. While we're giving them a job and giving them a livable wage to help them achieve the goals that they need to, and combat some of the things that they were being led into because they needed money. We also realized that when there's idle time and they're not going to school, they're still in that environment. So the more we can keep them with us and teach them positive uses of their time and help develop them, the greater outcome we'll have. We'll have another graduation this May. We have 2 graduations a year. Watching our youth, that most of them are first high school graduates in their family, but watching them walk across the stage and get that diploma is one of the greatest feelings I can imagine having. I can't imagine how they feel. For me, it's an incredible feeling because it's such a moment of pride. And now 30% of our kids are going on to college. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, a long nutshell of what we do and how we support our kids. We have a professional team of about 20. So that's everyone from the restaurant, from our chef teams, operations, and our program team, walking alongside them in their journey. We call it the tiers of success. It's the journey that they go through during the internship program. There are 4 tiers. Each tier has a number of requirements and responsibilities that they have to complete before they can move on to the next. When they move on to the next tier, they do increase pay by $1. And they increase kind of their level of leadership amongst other interns. That you get paid more for doing catering events outside of the restaurant. So as you move up, you get chosen for more catering events, which they love to do because they're a little less stressed than working in the restaurant, but they get to go to cool people's houses and they get to. At one event, they were out there cleaning someone's pool because they just thought it was so cool and it was such an awesome house that 2 of them were like, "We'll clean your pool." It's such a great experience. They are amazing young people. 2 of our graduates are now working at Children's Medical Center. One is a medical assistant. She does all the blood work. Another is training to be a nurse. My daughter was in the hospital about 6 months ago, and I ran into our intern. I was crossing. We were just passing each other. I was like, "Evelyn!" So it was such a prideful moment. They go on to do amazing things. Another one of our early interns got a scholarship from NASA. He was a first high school graduate in his family. His family came over here from Mexico. His parents were illegal immigrants when they got here. And he was trying to help take care of himself and his brother. His parents got a divorce. They had no money. And he got in trouble for selling drugs because he was trying to help pay for his family to get by. And didn't want to ask either of his parents for money because they were a kind of contentious divorce, and he didn't want to go to one and have the other one get mad. So he just found a way to do it on his own. And now he's in college and supported by NASA. So to deem these young people as throwaways when they have so much to give the world. And they're just also just amazing young people who hugged me when I walked into work. One of them called me last night because he wants to talk about pay. He's like, I just want to sit down with the leadership team. And they're really finding their voice and their confidence. In the final tier of the internship program, we work with a number of employers in and around Dallas to find them their next role, because we want them to go out and thrive. But we want to do it in a way that eases them into that transition and supports them along the way. So we find them in what we call an externship, so they spend part of the time working with Café Momentum and part of the time with their future employer to ease that transition and then move on to what they're going to do next. And then finally, on expansion, we are planning to open 30 Café Momentums in the next 10 years. We currently have a program in Nashville and a program in Pittsburgh. And the next 5 on the rotation are Atlanta, Denver, Houston, Boston, and Baltimore are all raising money to open locations. But our goal is to affect juvenile justice across the country. We feel like we've proven with this model that with a little love, a little support, some resources and opportunity for these young people, they can be whoever they want to be. That we don't need to lock them up. We need to take care of them and help them take care of themselves. That's Café Momentum.
We look forward to hearing more from you in just a little bit. And again, use Margaret's comments for possibility of questions you might like to pose to her. Luis serves as Chief Executive Officer for Society St. Vincent de Paul in North Texas. At St. Vincent de Paul, he leads the efforts in North, and is it still about 800 Vincentans? You might refer to them as power volunteers throughout North Texas. Prior to that, he spent his career in the IT world, discerned a call to give himself more and align his career to serving others. He previously served as VP of Service Delivery at Hudson Advisors. He was Director of Data Center Operations at Horace Mann Insurance, and has about 25 years of experience at Allstate. He earned his MBA from the University of Dallas, locally, and while at Allstate, and he earned his undergraduate degree at the Hilltop at Southern Methodist University. He and his family have lived here in North Texas for more than 30 years, and they're proud parishioners of 2 parishes, St. Anne's, the great St. Anne's Parish, Catholic Parish in Coppell, and the relatively newly built St. Philip the Apostle Catholic Church used to be in Louisville, now it's technically in Flower Mound, and if you haven't been out there, it is surrounded by beautiful native oaks, and it's just really quite a remarkable parish there. Now, that church is technically in the Fort Worth Diocese. So he has dual citizenship in the Dallas. Clearly in the good graces of both Bishop Olson and Bishop Burns. So we introduce Luis.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. But funny enough, recently met with Bishop Burns and was sharing with him a little bit of our story. And so he was very quick to say, well, I claim you as ours. So that's great. So it's wonderful to have bishops, kind of fighting for you. That's wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Matt and Ann and Bill and Anna, Dorina, the entire Catholic Foundation team. We really appreciate all of your support over the years at the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And thank you for just everything that you do within the community. Margaret, thank you for the incredible work that you do. It's very touching to hear what you're doing with children and with the youth, because you're right, there's no life that's a throwaway, and that's really foundational to what we are as a society. We are all about trying to encounter Christ in those that society has deemed as throwaways, people that just don't have any hope. We need to give them hope, and that's what we're all about. I've got a very simple, maybe not so simple? There we go. A simple little slide deck that I want to speak to, but it really is all about what we are as a society of St. Vincent de Paul. Our mission, as you can see here, we're a network of friends inspired by the gospel values, and it is all about going out and growing in holiness. One of the things that profoundly affected me as I made the decision to transition from corporate into the Society of St. Vincent de Paul was learning that the primary mission of the society, first and foremost, is the growth and holiness of its members. So it really is about developing a spirituality and encountering a relationship with God. And in doing so, then being able to take that faith and go out and serve the world. We don't serve Catholics, we serve people because we're Catholic, because of our faith. Our faith is what drives us. And it really is the call of the Vincentians then to align and get into, come into the society. It very much is a deep calling that they have to want to change, to want to help impact lives. We can't save everybody. You look back, and when Christ was here 2,000 years ago, he could have very easily twinkled his nose, like Bewitched, and changed everything and made everything good. But he opted not to do that, and that's because he's inviting us to come into helping to fulfill that mission. And the society then is all about trying to help fulfill that mission and really help encounter Christ in those that we're serving. And in doing so, we inevitably discover that not only are we bringing Christ to them, but we're discovering Christ in them. And that is so foundational to who we are as a society. We have a fairly large presence within the Diocese of Dallas. These are all the different conferences that are listed. We have over 800 conventions. We have 38. We refer to the local chapters as conferences. Now you may wonder why a conference, who's going to be speaking at the conference. Well, conference, the actual, the root word of conference is a gathering and sharing and exchange of ideas and instruction. And it all began with Blessed Father Gonzalez and a group of Catholic students, university students, that they were exchanging ideas and talking and debating and exchanging ideas as to how they could affect change. And so they developed this idea, this concept of, well, let's have a conference. Let's come together in conferencia, in Spanish, and be able to exchange ideas as to how we can affect change and how we can serve those in need. And so these are all the different conferences that we have in North Texas. I am pleased to share with you that we have 3 new conferences that started up just here in the last month. So we continue to grow. And we're looking, hopefully it would be great to be able to have a conference in every single one of the parishes in the diocese. And that includes both dioceses. Because interestingly enough, I've got a great relationship with the Fort Worth Council as well, and helping them to grow because we've got a great team that's here, and there's an opportunity to be able to expand our footprint in both dioceses. So I wanted to share a little bit with you some of our history. As I mentioned, we began because a number of Catholic students were together, university students. They were debating non-Catholics, and the non-Catholics actually asked them point blank, what is your faith doing to help the poor? Because at the time in the 1850s in France, there was a tremendous amount of destitution, poverty, sickness, and so it really was a call out to these university students to say, what is your faith doing to help the poor? And so our founder, Blessed Frederick Gonzalez, turned to his peers and said, as you can see here, we must do what our Lord Jesus Christ did when preaching the gospel. Let us go to the poor. And so that's what we do, and that's what we started to do. They went to the poor. I was talking to Levi earlier. We don't have neighbors who call for help. We don't have them come to an office or come to the church. We go to them. We ask them to invite us into their home so that we can go and see for ourselves what's happening. And it takes a lot of courage for somebody to say, I need help, and okay, I'll let you come into my home. I'll let you come into my mess. I'll let you see all the junk that I'm living with. And so that's a tremendous step of vulnerability that they're taking, and that as Vincentians, we want to honor that. So we go in 2 by 2, straight out of the Gospels, right? The Lord sent the disciples out 2 by 2. So we go in 2 by 2 into people's homes, and we talk with them, we pray with them, we discover what it is that's going on in their lives that cause them to have to reach out to us and help. And oftentimes in those conversations, we discover that there's other things that are happening in their lives that they need assistance with. They may be calling us for rent assistance or utility assistance, but then we go and we find out that they have medications that they need to take that they can't afford. And so we can help them out with our charitable pharmacy. They may have children that are there that need some after-school tutoring. We have a program around that. They may be caught in a cycle of debt with predatory loans. Well, we have a program for that. So we go, we encounter them, we discover what their needs are and help them, give them the hand to help pull them out of that cycle. Again, similar to what Margaret was talking about, this is about recognizing that these are people, these are neighbors that could very well be you and I. You never know what the circumstances are behind any of these situations. And oftentimes, the Vincentians, as they go out to take their home visits, there might be maybe some prejudgment that's going on sometimes in their minds as to, well, this is what's happening here. But then inevitably they come to discover, no, there's a deeper story here that is so similar to mine that, if not by the grace of God, it could be me that's sitting in that same chair needing assistance. And it's very rewarding to also have people that want to give back because they've been helped by the society. There have been plenty of times when we've seen a small donation of $10, $15 that's come in. And somebody will write on the check, thank you for being there when I needed it most. This is to pay it forward. Those are the donations that you're like, okay, we made a difference. We may not have realized it at that time, and it may have been 5 years ago, but we made a difference and helped somebody out of that hopeless situation that they were in. We've been now, so the society came to the U.S. in 1845. We've been serving here in the Diocese of Dallas since 1956. Holy Trinity Parish is where the first conference was started. So we're coming up on our big celebration for us for an anniversary. So we'll be doing that up in a couple of years here. But very excited about that. So a little bit about our programs. I am not about to get into every single one of these programs, but it just gives you a good idea as to the breadth of the different things that we do offer. And really, all of this began out of the Vincentian home visits. As people went out and went on their home visits, they discovered that there were systemic issues that were going on that perhaps are larger than a single conference could deal with. And I'll use our charitable pharmacy as a great example. Establishing a charitable pharmacy, as you can well imagine, that is not something that you do overnight. Hey, you know what? Let's start giving out free medications to people. Yeah, sign me up for that. Let's open it up tomorrow. That took about 8 to 10 years to get through all the legal issues around that, to get the funding for that, and to get the licensing for that, to get that established. Hank Herman was really the driving force behind getting that started. We opened the charitable pharmacy in 2018. So we've been in existence now since that time. We have last fiscal year, which ended in September, we gave 80,000 prescriptions out free of charge. These are free medications to the uninsured in the state of Texas, and it is for chronic illnesses. A formulary of over 200 medications that are available. We're looking to take that statewide. We're dealing with other councils now in other parts of the state. We're hoping to hit about 120,000 this year, and they're looking forward to continued growth. That's an example of, that was a result of home visits that occurred. People saw that what was happening was that neighbors, and we refer to people who call us for assistance as neighbors. They're not customers, okay? They are our neighbors. They are people that have asked for help. And so in those home visits with our neighbors, we came to realize that some people were making a decision between purchasing food to feed their families and getting medications that they need for diabetes, asthma, high blood pressure. Life-saving medication that if they didn't take those medications, they were inevitably ending up in the hospital. We have one patient, one neighbor that we're taking care of at the pharmacy. Last year, they went to the ER 70 times. That was their primary care physician. They're uninsured. They have no other means by which to go in and get assistance. So they would make visits to the ER and get some medication and go home with 7 days worth of medication, and that would be it. Now through our program, they've got what they need. They've got the insulin that they need for their diabetes, and they can go to work. They can take care of their families, and they don't become continuously reliant upon other safety nets. We're giving them a help. We've got other programs as well. Louise Bland is one of our team members here. She's the driving force behind our mini loan program. That helps address really the evils of predatory lending, title and payday loans. These are loans that people take out at $1,000, but interest rates on those are 400, 500, 600, 700%. So we've seen neighbors of ours that take a loan out from a payday loan. They've been paying for 4 years, and they still haven't made a dent on the $1,000 principal that they took out. All they've been doing is paying interest. And so We offer a program that gets them out of that, gets them financially stable, helps them, teaches them financial management, and gives them some money at the end of that with a savings, $50 deposit into a savings account. So it gets them to a place where now they can do for themselves, they can take care of themselves, just as Café Momentum does for the youth. We have a wonderful program down in South Dallas in Lancaster, the St. Vincent Center down there. It's a hub of collaboration and services. We're inviting other nonprofits to get involved. We're hopefully in the next few months, we're going to be opening up a charitable medical clinic down there as well, to really start to serve the folks that are there. And there it is all about sensing what the community needs are, understanding what's going on and what are the needs and what can we do to bring that to the forefront. How can we host and help with those. We may not have all the solutions. I'm a big proponent, and the team has heard me talk about this multiple times. I'm a big proponent of us not trying to recreate the wheel. There are other nonprofits that we need to learn to partner with that do great work. And why should I go and replicate something that somebody else is doing and has been doing for many, many years? Why not take advantage of that and work with them to say, you know what, when I've got an issue with somebody who's looking for immigration assistance, Catholic Charities, I'm going to send them your way because you've got a forte in that, you've got strength in that. I've got a charitable pharmacy that's here. Why don't you send people that need medications to us? And being able to do that. And that all begins with partnerships and looking at how we as a community can serve those that are in need. There are a lot more people that are in need than there are those of us blessed to be in a position to be able to help. Listen to what you were sharing with us. Again, we need to talk afterwards. While we don't have a prison ministry here in Dallas, through the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, there are a number of other councils that do that I think would be very interested in your program. And I kind of made note, Atlanta in particular has got a very large presence of Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And there's things that we could do to work together as well. And I think that ultimately is what the mantra needs to be, and what I try to reinforce with with every group that I ever talk to is it's about partnership and how can we work together to take care of those that are desperately in need of the assistance that we can provide. And I'll kind of close my comments with the following. I thought it was very appropriate today. This was just out of a reflection book for this morning. And it reads, if we try to work well and to give our actions the transcendental dimension of the love of God, our deeds will be of use for the salvation of men, and we will make the world more human. That's what we're called to do. We are called to be the hands and feet of Christ. And every Vincentian that I know, that I've had the blessing and the pleasure of meeting, that is very evident in the way that they approach the work that they do. It is very much a volunteer organization, but it is more than volunteer. This is a calling. This is a vocation. Quite frankly, when Vincentians talk about volunteering, they don't consider themselves volunteers. They just consider themselves laborers in the vineyard. And this is just very, very foundational to who they are as individuals. So,
I'm going to continue on the conversation, and then we'll move into Q&A. One of the things that you spoke about is I'll let you come into my mess. And Margaret, you talked about the hours of influence that you all need to have. Both of those speak to having to have very personal, very close interaction, human behavior. So knowing this audience here and that many are looking for models that can help them structure their nonprofit, how do you both go about, we'll start with you, Margaret, how do you balance out having financially sound business practices, knowing there are going to be those incidental moments of compassion that might cause you to say, well, this really wasn't part of our budget, but we need to do it because did you hear this story? So how do you manage and balance financial business sound practices with the need to be as compassionate as your organization is?
Well, that's a huge component of what we do and why we do it and how we've created what we have created. We have built this program based on what our kids tell us they need. They told us they needed a school, and we figured out a way to build a school. They tell us those things. Right now we're looking at how do we create a child care system within our program, because they're telling us that we're single moms and we don't have anybody to help us take care of our child, and to go make money And if I don't have any money, I can't pay somebody to take care of our child. So along the journey and how we've evolved, Café Momentum has been open for 8 years. I've been with the organization for 7. And they tell us along the way, and we similarly do home visits also when our kids are in orientation with us to assess where they are and what they need, and we build that into our program. I think that's paramount to our success and to the financial piece of that. When I first came in, there was a moment that we were building. I came in to do development, and we were at a moment of, are we going to make payroll? And we've been open a year, but because we were so compassionate to the needs and putting in the things that we needed to do at the moment for our kids, it was not financially sound. And we created the right system to become that, and God help us, we will never be in that place again, and we are healthy now, but we do create avenues for adding those things in, those unexpected costs. And unexpected delivery to our youth. But that's the essence of what we're doing. If we don't listen to our constituents and listen to those that are telling us what they need, then we can't be successful and they can't be successful. So I'm not sure that exactly answered your question, but I think the key to all nonprofits is raise more money. And I will always be a development person at heart, so every time I walk into a room, I feel like everybody just knows, whether it's my family or friends or an audience that is a fundraiser. I'm always going to ask you for money. So yes, development people are key to the success of nonprofits, and getting out there and sharing your mission and connecting the passion of generous individuals in our community, connecting them with the passion of what we're doing and what Luis is doing. We are fortunate to live in Dallas, that it is a very generous community. But when you connect those two passions, you're bound to success.
Yeah, I completely agree. Very similarly, as I mentioned, the home visits is where a lot of our programs end up developing, and we come to realize that this is what the needs are. So it is about listening to what the needs are. And there's a lot of prayer that goes into it, as well. We're as I mentioned at the onset, we're unabashedly, this is about us growing in holiness. And so much of what we do, every meeting that we have begins and ends with prayer. The visits begin and end with prayer as well. We'll invite the neighbors if they want to be a part of those prayers as well. So really, there's a very deep sense of needing to place a lot of faith in this. And there are times where you're looking at it like, okay, things are not looking good from a budget perspective, but you say, but you know what, this is the Lord's work, and if it's intended to do what it needs to do, then it will come. You have the old adage of you build it and they will come. You have to do it prudently though. You've got to be smart about doing the right things and building the reserves and having a great development team that we do and communicating. I think that's the other piece too, is being able to communicate the mission of what we're doing. I was just speaking with Margaret earlier. Part of what I think is very, what I'm coming to learn as well is inviting people to become a part of this mission. Henry Nouwen has done a great book on fundraising and development, and it really is all about inviting people to become a part of your mission. It's not about asking for money. This is about, I want you to be a part of this because it's profoundly affected who I am as an individual. We're changing lives. 75,000 people were helped last year by the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. $13 million worth of assistance, when it went out the door. That's changing lives. Why wouldn't we want to share that? I've heard way too often that the society is the hidden gem of the church. I don't want us to be hidden. This is great work that's being done. People need to know about it so they can be a part of it, because it changes your lives. I know it's changed. I've been with the society now for just over 14 months. It's changed our lives completely, our family. And we want to share that with others. So it's an invitation to be a part of something much larger than yourself.
As we move into Q&A, I just want to point out the catering side. The first time I had interaction with interns was at a reception at Jim and Barbara Maroney's house, the former publisher of the Dallas Morning News. And meeting those interns, they were so articulate, so eloquent, and they were so proud to tell their story. And it was a very nice home, and it was just refreshing to see that. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if individuals are looking to use Café Momentum as a catering support, they just could reach you, or they could
Yes,
reach anyone at
absolutely.
Café Momentum and say, we're interested, what are the requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So that's still very much, people can just reach out.
Absolutely, and we're open for service. Our restaurant's open Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, but we do caterings and private events all the time. But coming to the restaurant, you are essentially a volunteer because you're giving our youth the opportunity to practice the skills and to interact with you and show you what they've become, but also show you how much they care and tell them that they matter. So come down. And it's delicious food.
So let's open it up for Q&A questions.
Margaret, if I could, you talk about the youth, 15 to 19.
Uh-huh.
How long do you have those kids with you? If a kid comes into your system at 15, is he or she able to stay with you till they're 19?
Hopefully not, because we want them to thrive and fly on their own. They might stay in our school. They will, once they're in Café Momentum Academy, they stay until they complete high school. So like we have several former interns graduating this May. Our curriculum is designed to be about 12 months. Give or take, because some of our youth need just a leg up and a little bit of support and a little bit of opportunity. And in 6 months, they're ready to go to college, to take on a job that does have the need, it does meet their childcare needs, it's closer to home, a number of different reasons. We call them successful exits when our youth leave our program because they've bettered their situation and they're moving on to something that better fits their needs. Sometimes they stay longer than 12 months because they need us. They need more support, and we're compassionate to each of our youth while holding them accountable. So you also can't just camp out and stay forever because we're not doing anybody a service in that way. More than often, our youth come back a second time to restart the program, and sometimes a third time. They are asked to abide by what we call a code of conduct, which is just basically the rules of the internship program and what they're asked to do and ways that they are asked to leave. Some of them leave on their own accord, and some of them leave because they've done something that we have to ask them to leave. Because again, we're fighting this battle with a neighborhood and people that want to pull our kids out of success and don't want them to take this thing path. And many times that's a struggle also emotionally for our kids because these are the only people that ever took care of me and took me in as a family, but they're selling drugs and they're robbing houses. But they loved me when nobody else did. So we're fighting this battle, so we can't work harder than our kids work as much as we want to. So sometimes that takes a couple times for them to realize, oh, I really do need to change what I'm doing. One young man who's in our program right now, Brian, this is the second time he's been in the program. The first time he was with us for about 3 months, and now he's been with us for about 9. And it is like a different person. He has anger issues, but his ability to control his anger from the first time he was with us to this time is staggering. He has separated himself from groups that don't have his best interest at heart. So sometimes it takes them longer. So in that case, sometimes kids are with us for a couple of years, just different time frames. But we are compassionate to each and every one of them because they all come from a different starting point.
So your program is effectively individualized?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Maybe I missed it, but there's an ocean of thrown away children in this area. How do they get vetted into your program? What are your avenues?
Prior to COVID, we went into the detention center. We have not been in the detention center since COVID. So that was one way we reached a lot of youth. The system has changed a lot now. We haven't been in the system. We are working on an MOU with the county to go back in and do an in detention program starting this summer. But mostly we work with POs, probation officers, and word of mouth of our kids. But we do, and different community partners that are working with a similar population or low-income populations that might work with the parents, but the kids fall into our category too. So we try to partner with anyone working with our population. But we know there are more, 6,000 kids come out of detention in Dallas County every year, 60,000 in our country. So we know that there are more kids out there than we're currently helping, and we want to do anything and everything. So recruiting is a huge part of what we do because we want to make sure that they know we're here.
What is your capacity?
We have never turned anyone away. We have had as large as an orientation as 55 kids at one time and as small as 10. We generally have anywhere between 25 and 35 interns in the program at any given moment. But there was a time when I think we had 50 interns, and I call us the most inefficiently run restaurant because we promised them a livable wage and livable hours. So at one point, I remember the restaurant being open and like 30 kids just lined up at the expo station where about 20 people were eating dinner. So we've had to do A and B shifts, but we will, I hope that we never have that issue, and I think that we will always find a way to alleviate the problem if there is a capacity issue.
How did you decide, how did the founder decide to go with a cafe model restaurant? Was there anything?
He was a chef, like he is a chef. He would be mad if I said was. He still calls himself executive chef. You know, I've been in the kitchen. He says, I haven't been in the kitchen in like 5 years, and and people say the food's never been better. So it's quite but he was a chef by trade. He actually was part owner of Parigi in Uptown. And he was volunteered to go into a detention center and teach 8 young men how to make ice cream for an ice cream competition with culinary students from El Centro College. So he went in, and he says this often, is that he went in with the same prejudices and the same stereotype that many people have that don't know our population, that they, there'll be surly kids with saggy pants and they don't want to talk to, they don't want to learn anything. And he said he couldn't have been more wrong. He walked into that room, and these 8 young men were so eager to learn. He taught that it was the ice cream competition was it had to have a fruit and an herb. So he made them taste tarragon, and their comment was, "You're going to make me eat grass." And he ended up doing this competition at the Dallas Farmers Market, and one of those kids in detention actually won and beat out the culinary students. And he was so excited. He ran up to Chad at the end, and he said, I just want to make food and put a smile on people's face. When I get out of detention, I'm going to get a job. Should I get a job at Arby's or Chili's? And he said, what do you think? And Chad said, well, he said, whoever gives you the job first, and secondly, whoever pays you more. But he walked away from that experience knowing that he would never see those young men again because they're juveniles. He didn't even know their last name. And that he would come out of detention and go right back to the exact same situation. So he really struggled with it for about a year of like, why isn't anyone doing anything? And why am I asking if why other people aren't doing it if I'm not doing anything? So he sold his stake in Parigi, and as he says, took the second mortgage out on his home and started raising awareness. He did 41 pop-up dinners over 3 years to bring people to kind of a foodie event, but busing these 8 different young men each month to a restaurant in Dallas to serve at the level and standard of that restaurant. The other, we believe that our kids can and will rise to whatever level of expectation is set for them. That's why we are a fine dining restaurant, and they are searing the scallops, they are making the steak, and they can do it, and they want to do it. So he put all his faith in that. And as he says, that he takes kids out of jail and teaches them to play with knives and fire.
Margaret, I have a question. Is there a spiritual aspect to your program as well, maybe in the mental health area, or can you even do that?
Well, we are not really, not officially. We are not a faith-based organization, but we do partner with many people that come in and talk about faith because it's not a taboo subject for us. We just kind of remain agnostic to anyone and everyone that supports our kids. We support them, but we have had lots of people come in and talk about prayer and the power of faith, and many of our kids are open to that, and some are 100% against it. It also like religion in general. It depends on how you grew up. And, what you've experienced and how people have presented something to you. So, I mean, I am a Catholic, so I welcome it and encourage our kids to welcome that into their lives. But it's not a built-in component of the program.
Louise,
Yes.
one runaway thought and one question. So my runaway thought was you mentioned that you're always open to partnerships and aligning with like-minded people to share a same vision. And I thought about Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Pharmacy, and I just want to mention that in case there might be something down the road there as you're opening up the pharmacies. But anyway, you were mentioning how you're actively always looking to scale and going into new markets and building in existing cities. What is your operational and the financial model and strategy for scaling and trying to make the most impact in as many places as you can?
Sure. Well, so great. Let me address first the Mark Cuban, because we always get that question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And if Mark happens to be listening, I'd love to have a conversation with you because the great work that Mark is doing is serving a huge segment of the population that can still afford medications. He's bringing it down to a price point that is affordable for them. We're taking care of people that can't even afford the $4 or $5 medications. So for me, I kind of see it as an opportunity to say, well, Mark, if you've got somebody that you can't take care of because they can't even afford your prices, send them our way, because we can take care of them, because if they're uninsured, then we can help them out.
He
so
answers all his own emails, by the way.
What's that?
He answers his own emails, by the way.
Okay, well then I need to reach out. So thank you for that. In terms of how we go about scaling, so one of the wonderful things about the Vincent model is that everything is pushed down to the local level. So at the conference level is where they do their own fundraising for the assistance that they're going to provide to any of the neighbors that call. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's usually rent assistance, utility assistance, etc. So when we start a conference at a parish, we just look at the pastor and know, look, we just need to be able to do fundraising here. We don't expect you to fund us. If you want to, that's great. We have some pastors that do, which is fantastic. Others that just allow us to do fundraising there. So they will do fundraising to take care of the needs for the local community. And then every conference is asked to make a quarterly contribution to the council, which is the broader organization that myself and the other members of the team that are here today are a part of. And so what we're responsible then for are some of these larger systemic programs that we have and the oversight of the society throughout North Texas. And so those contributions help run that along with the development that we do for fundraising. So then when we start to look at how do we expand, for example, our study time program that we have, it's an after-school program. We opened up a third campus this past fall at Bishop Lynch. So we've got one at Bishop Lynch, Santa Clara, and at our thrift store on Northwest Highway. We're going to look at now, okay, what's going to cost for us to open up a fourth campus sometime in the fall of 2024. What's the fundraising that we can do to start to raise funds for being able to support that kind of a location. So we'll look forward in terms of what the anticipated needs are going to be based on what we have. Same thing with our St. Vincent Center down in Lancaster. I think it's proven to be a fantastic, did I say that right, Lancaster or Lancaster? I always reveal that I'm not the latest Texan by the way I say it, so I apologize.
Lancaster.
Lancaster, there you go.
Lancaster.
Lancaster, there you go. I'll go to Lancaster, take the New York out of me. What I'd love to be able to do is, that would be a next recreation of that St. Vincent Center at another location somewhere else in the area that we feel that there's an opportunity to be able to serve that community. So all of it will be around raising funds, doing our development work, doing due diligence, again, a lot of prayerful discernment as well in terms of where we need to go and how we need to handle our monies and where we think the Lord is calling us to do our mission work.
I think part of your question, excuse me, Christina, was that the pharmacy is a mail order pharmacy. So we're not setting up brick and mortar pharmacies in other parts of the state. All of that is coming through our local mail order pharmacy located in Vickery Meadows. Okay? So our business model, to direct your question, is how do we gain support from around the state? Because one of the biggest costs, a big cost, is the cost of sending the medications at our expense to the patient. We send out thousands of prescriptions every week, and we have to pay a provider to deliver them to these people's home, be it USPS or any number of other partners that we use for transportation. The business model is to get our partners in Fort Worth or in Austin or San Antonio to make a contribution to the cost of that transportation. So that's, our business model is that mail order pharmacy, not a brick and mortar pharmacy store.
A couple of questions for you, please. One, I've always wondered this. I've heard and learned more about St. Vincent de Paul Society over the last couple of years, but I've never kind of learned, and I haven't truthfully and honestly done enough research on my own, but it's great to have an executive director of a council here to ask this question directly. How has the model worked at the international level? Because obviously there's different councils, which you're the executive director of the North Texas Council, which would serve primarily the DFW metro area, right? How does that work within the broader scheme of St. Vincent de Paul Society at the international level? And what sort of resources, also kind of required programs and other things that are done throughout the St. Vincent de Paul Society do you have to do here, and vice versa? How much does what you do here kind of, hey, we're forming this mail order pharmacy, how does that feed back up to the international level and go to other councils?
Sure. Yeah, so kind of going back to the initial way I explained it with regards to a conference getting started at a parish, and then that rolling up to the council. Here in North Texas, we have, as you saw earlier, 6 different districts. So what we do is we kind of group those conferences around into a district. They elect a president, district president, who sits on our board, and then that rolls up to the council. We then have we're divided into a number of different regions throughout the U.S. There's 6 regions in the U.S., and we're part of the South Central region. We then all report to a national council, which is based out of St. Louis. St. Louis is where the society first started here in the U.S. Our international headquarters is in Paris. But I go back to, everything starts at the local level. So there's no required programs that let's say we've made the pharmacy very successful now. It's not like other councils in other parts of the country have to do the pharmacy. That may not be something that they feel that is necessary. There could be a pharmacy, a charitable pharmacy in their particular metroplex that is very effective right now. That's great. We modeled ours after 2 different, they were not St. Vincent de Paul, but 2 other charitable pharmacies that were statewide in North Carolina and South Carolina. So that was the model that we used to kind of create the one that here. But we certainly share that information. We share the programs that we're doing. And then there are some efforts that are viewed as being, okay, these are becoming very foundational to who we are. So let's establish national committees to be able to kind of help oversee, provide resources, provide not governance, but resources to be able to help. Everything that comes from national, it's all recommendations and resources. It's never you must do this. That's not how it works. We do make payments up to our national council as well. It's all part of this concept of solidarity and recognizing that we're all together and trying to work together. There's also, I haven't really mentioned it, but there's this practice that we have that's called twinning that we have. So we have some conferences that are in some poorer parishes that can't do that don't have as many resources to be able to do fundraising. Others that are in very wealthy parishes. And so the twinning allows for parishes, for the conferences to be able to share money, to be able to say, okay, you've got a need in this particular case for this neighbor, here we'll send you $500 to be able to help. And so that's a way that we create, again, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that unity to be able to help our neighbors wherever they may be. Then when you take that to the international level, then there's opportunities for us to get involved in some of the international crises that are happening as well. Again, the U.S. Council, we're blessed to be in the country that we're in, despite all the issues that we may have, very wealthy as well, as a country. So we're able to make donations to help out with some of the other. There was a lot of involvement that we had with Ukraine, with situations that are, again, these international emergencies that we can provide some assistance with sending, and that's international twinning at its best. So that's kind of how we're able to work and function nationally as well as internationally.
And that leads into, I think, my second question. Thank you. That was very
Sure.
well put. it makes sense. It's the model of kind of a decentralized, solidarity subsidiary model.
Right.
You know, very in line with Catholic social teaching, which doesn't surprise me at all, from the St. Vincent de Paul Society. What I am interested in learning about is what you guys are doing internationally. I have an international nonprofit NGO that I've started, Great Clean Water to Communities in Need. We're working 100% in Peru right now. And I was just curious what you guys are doing in Peru. I haven't heard, frankly, anything about the St. Vincent de Paul Society in Peru. We're working primarily in northern Peru. And then, you know, what kind of, you mentioned partnerships. I'm assuming, you know, you're not the only council that's looking to partner. It seems like that might be kind of a systemic kind of approach within the St. Vincent de Paul Society. What sort of partnerships are you all doing with other NGOs that are doing, you know, humanitarian aid relief work, but is kind of on a much more kind of long-term infrastructure of capital investment scale than, you know, what you guys do, which is more kind of, would say, very personal, neighbor to neighbor, home to home approach. What are you guys doing at that level?
So I think
and as far as empowerment and, you know, equipping.
I think the best example that I can point to for us here in North Texas of a partnership like that would be at our St. Vincent Center in Lancaster. We own the property that Catholic Charities of Dallas manages in conjunction with North Texas Food Bank to run the Jane Pruitt Food Pantry. So that was 3 different nonprofits, you know, all coming together. Again, we have the property, Catholic Charities runs the food pantry, North Texas Food Bank supplies the food. That's, I think, a great example of here's the type of partnership. The other partnerships are really, it's grounded in relationship. So, you know, Dave and I will meet on a regular basis from Catholic Charities to talk about what are opportunities that we have. I think about this last summer, in response to the immigration crisis and the situation at the border, made a couple of calls to Goodwill, Catholic Charities, Knights of Columbus, and we were able to send 2 tons worth of clothing down the border to help out, and that was in response to Bishop Kelly had been meeting with the bishop down in Laredo, and you know he was just exasperated about, you know, can you do anything? And so he called, and we've got our thrift store, so it was a couple of phone calls, and all of a sudden rallied around that, and within 48 hours we had a truck going down. 48 hours later, you know, Goodwill matched it because you know it was good Catholic, and made a phone call, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, we'll help the bishop. So it's those types of opportunities, and taking from there and trying to start to build on how can we make more formalized, you know, partnerships. I don't have an answer for you on Peru. I'd have to get back to you and let you know what we have down there. I know we have a very strong presence in Brazil and other parts of Latin America, but specific to Peru, I don't know, but I can find out for you.
In the interest of time, we'll take one more question, and then we'll start, Phil, with you, and I'll stress lightning round. So fairly quick, just if there's anything about your organization that you'd like to share for the others. So.
You mentioned a couple of times wanting to partner with other organizations. Did you say that you have like an avenue to do that right now? Was it must sound like you had a space to do that, or is it just where?
Yeah, we do down in Lancaster, our St. Vincent Center. It is a center that we've got some available offices there. So we invite some of the local nonprofits to come and office out of there if they want to. And we've got some partnerships that we're lining up there, for that center. That's the only one that we have an actual physical location that we can invite other nonprofits to come to.